Welcome to State of Search. Thanks for attending. Thanks for choosing this session as well. It's great to have you here. So this session is optimizing for new Google ad formats. Specifically, I'm going to talk about Google expanded text ads and responsive search ads. My name is John Ellis. I own Crescent Interactive, a digital marketing agency in Nashville, Tennessee. You can find me on Twitter today and really every day, discussing many of the things we're talking about today. Feel free to tweet during the session, leave comments, ask questions. I'd love to hear from you today or any day moving forward. Love your thoughts and love your questions. As mentioned, I am from Nashville, Tennessee, home of country music, bachelorette parties, and pedal taverns. And oftentimes you get all three of those together to create what we like to call the Woo Girls. If you haven't been, it's really worth the trip. Not now, obviously, but eventually. When you do come, look me up, find me, come visit. We'd love to have you here, and I'd love to connect with you. So that's Nashville. Myself, I've been in this paid search space for close to 20 years. I've seen changes since paid search was around, really since this whole cost per click model existed, essentially. The search wars were just getting started then, and a lot of changes, a lot of jockeying for position. In the early 2000s, I was creating ads using Overture, the top paid search channel at the time. So I saw when Google came on board with their own model, first taking from Overture and eventually sort of creating their own system. And I mention this because throughout these years of paid channels and paid search, the constant has been change. And change is what we're talking about today. So yes, I own Crescent Interactive. That's me. These are some of my clients, many of the clients I've had over the past, and really some of these currently as well. But today we're going to talk again. Today we're talking about Google extended text ads and responsive search ads and how to sort of best optimize there. But before we dig too far into the weeds of Google ads and ETAs, it's important to talk about plans. So consider this part of your planning process. Plans are good. Plans are great. We all need plans. But ultimately, they're just plans. So as Mike Tyson used to say, everyone had a plan until they stepped into the ring, until he punched them in the mouth. And then their plans are out the window. So keeping in mind that plans change. And in our case, that means several things. One being when new competition enters the space, enters the bidding space, something we didn't account for, something we didn't know was out there. Now they're spending money, so we have to adjust for that. Maybe users are tired of seeing the same message. They get user fatigue. Your ad's been shown for way too long, and they're just done with it already. And then a good thing, but also something you need to be aware of, is your awareness grows. People know who you are now. But it may also mean your ad has to change and your copy has to change. Sort of like the traditional marketing funnel that we've all seen over the years. You know, as your awareness grows, if people know who you are, now you have to create more solution-based ad copy. Give them action. Create your copy around what their problem is. And all that to say that things that have worked in the past may not work now. So we're going to keep that in mind as you grow forward. The change is constant. Even the name of Google's product and logo has changed over the years. And I'm sure many of us, like myself, are still finding ourselves saying AdWords often instead of Google Ads. So it's part of that process of changing as we go along. Now, the rules of ad copy have obviously changed over the years, which is where we're kind of getting into the conversation here. Gaining more characters, ultimately more real estate space and search engine results pages, which can be a good thing. In 2018, we were introduced to expanded text ads, giving us even more space. 3 headlines, 2 descriptions of 90 characters. Lots of room to play with and expand on. Now, when expanded ads came out, though, there was this, now I have all this space. I can't wait to kind of fill this up with all sorts of ad copy. But the quick way to do that, instead of creating a new copy, was we duplicated it. We copied the headline to the description. We took what was working and we moved it to headline 3, moved it to description 2. We repeated, we cloned. And data has shown over and over again that does not pay off. But ultimately, this is where the difficulty comes in. Copy is hard. Unique copy is hard. But that's also what separates the good ads from the bad ads, taking that time to write that copy. Let's look at an example here. We're going to see more examples as we go along. Now, clearly the second ad ran out of ideas. It ran out of things to say. It also missed the opportunity to extend this message. You have all this extra real estate space and you're doing nothing with it. So that's another example of an ad really not taking example. And I see that all the time. People getting lazy with their writing. Take an ad and move it there and there and there. They're trying to fill up this space. Now, filling up that space is a key stopping point there. So let me kind of take a sidebar. It's important to note, as much as we talk about these expanded ads, they may not always be the answer. Now, simple ads could be your best performer. Look at your historical ads and see what's working for you. Older, shorter, direct ads may be the way to go. The data is going to tell you what works. Keeping in mind the maximum length, like the 90 characters we talked about, does not mean it's the minimum length. Remember, conversions matter to you. I assume in most cases, most of us, conversions matter. So often what Google thinks is thinking that the clicks matter. It may not be the same as you. We're going to get into sort of looking at those numbers in a few minutes, but know what your goals are. So we come back to the basics with ad creation. No matter the size, the messaging matters. That means having a strong call to action. This is nothing new. You've heard this said many times before. Having a call to action. Be wary of decision paralysis, by trying to do too much in your ads. This is important when you hear people talk about landing pages. You have your banners, your buttons, your call to actions. But it's also just as important when it comes to your ads, to kind of know what the goal is of each ad. Just because you have this space and you're trying to squeeze stuff in, don't try to do too much. And ultimately, remember your headline. Again, we have all this space, and as much space as you have and all the other headlines and descriptions, there's still nothing as strong as a good headline. Now, having that headline means anything after that should complement that message. So let's look at a good example. Well, rather, let's look at a bad example of a headline. There's really nothing here. There's a hint of a call to action in that description, but even that's very vague. It doesn't really tell the user what you want them to do. So keep in mind, your ads are so important, especially when it's a high competitive field, to stand out. So I mentioned several times that we have all this extra space now with ETAs. But it's not really the whole story. Ads are not what they seem. Often the text is not even seen. So you spend a lot of times writing and editing and creating this perfect ad, and sometimes it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't show. Now, part of that is just because there's different reasons to become that. Some of it's just Google being Google, and we can't account for that. But other times it's just because of the various screen sizes. So Google has to adjust for those screen sizes there. So that means your full ad may not always appear. So your headline and call to action that I previously mentioned are even more essential now if you don't know what's getting cut off. So let's look at some competing ads. They're essentially sort of having the same problem. These are just random ads that I found. No affiliation with these at all. So these are from desktop searches. And I mentioned desktop because I'm going to show you mobile in a second. And oddly, the text is cut off. And I see that more and more where ads are just cut off randomly. So when we look at the same ads on mobile, the text is also cut off, but it's inconsistent to where they're being cut off. The top ads show more on mobile than they do on desktop, which is odd. But the point being, there seems to be no rhyme or reason sometimes of when your ad's getting cut off. So be aware of what's actually being seen. That means testing. That means looking at multiple devices, multiple operating system, multiple browsers, and really seeing what's different. And know that sometimes your ad's going to get cut off. And again, so it's even more important to make sure you get that message in quickly. And your follow-up messages, like your description, should complement that message. Shouldn't be a separate action. Now let's talk about the losers. Finding the losing ad is essential. This is old school digital advertising, but it really hasn't changed. It's A/B testing. We've heard it before. So that means constantly looking for a better ad. Once you discover a clear winner, then you find a new one, and then you test that. A/B testing's never done, unfortunately. We talk about this being hard work with the ads. Google ads and search ads and paid media, it's hard to do it right. It's easy to get something out quickly, but it's hard to maintain it. And this is where people separate themselves from average people to having the better ads and better solutions. But finding the losers starts with understanding your own goal versus how Google measures success. We talked about this previously. Knowing what matters to you may not be the same thing as what often matters to Google. And I see this often, and it's something to be on the lookout for. So looking at this example here, according to Google, the ad on the left is the most successful because it has the most clicks and most conversions. Now, obviously, that's a winner all the way around. So that's important. That's what we want. We want conversions. We obviously want clicks too if we can get high conversions with that. But looking at the math, it shows us that the better ad value is actually ad variation too. It's a much lower cost per conversion. So in theory, if we spent more on ad 2, we would get more goals. We would get more conversions, or more goals, higher goals at a lower cost. And that's ultimately what we all want. But Google's going to continue showing that first ad more because they think that's performing better. So just keep an eye on that and kind of what you can do. And that means going back to A/B testing. That means maybe pausing the high performer according to Google and letting the other one sort of shine more. So just be aware of that and be aware of what matters to you. All right, so we've been talking about ETAs, expanded text ads. But before we finish our conversation today, I want to touch on RSAs, responsive search ads. Now with RSAs, if you don't know, you feed in 15 headlines and 4 description, and Google picks out variations to show in search results. The math there means there's 43,000 variations of ads. It's something we just can't do on our own. Even if you somehow manage to create 43,000 ads, you can't test it, you can't compare. It's impossible to manually do it. So this is a good thing that Google's doing this for you, right? But as with anything with Google, it's not always as great as it seems. Now, I should say I am a fan of RSAs. I use them all the time, and I encourage you to use them in every single ad group you have. But there are some things you need to know, things that are worth highlighting that you need to be aware of with RSAs. So in a perfect world, we would know what combination of those 43,000 ads work the best. Did this headline work better with this description? Is this headline standing out? And if it does, is it getting more clicks? Is it getting more conversions? Which combination works? So then if you know, you can take that and create your own expanded text ads based on what you know is working. But we don't get that. So we are left trusting Google on what's working and what's not working. So we have to make some assumptions here. We have to look at their ads. So in a sense, you almost don't want your RSAs to perform too well because then you don't have any data. So in many cases, your RSAs may perform better than your expanded text ads. I see that often a lot, which in theory sounds like a good thing, but it's always a red flag for me when I see my RSAs performing my ETAs. It means my ETAs are not as strong as they need to be. So I need to make some adjustments. I need to change my headlines. I need to change my descriptions. So that's just an internal goal I have for myself to sort of beat Google's ads with my own ads. So keep that in mind. And remember the RSAs to have headlines that can stand on their own, that make sense on their own. Because Google very well may choose the headline that you sort of just threw in the last minute that you didn't spend a lot of time on. So keep that in mind with RSAs. So let's recap a little bit here. Keep in mind, like anything in the Google ad space, things change often. But with the new ETAs, use that space you were given. That means clear call to action, strong headlines are still essential. And that's even more important than ever because as we saw, sometimes ads get cut off. We don't know what's going to be seen and what's not going to be seen. Responsive search ads have to sort of follow those same rules. But again, keeping in mind, you almost don't want your RSAs to perform too well. You don't want them to perform better in your extended text ads because that means you need to do some work on your ETAs. So keep in mind that you may see great numbers, it may look good, but that sort of tells me there's a red flag there to be on the lookout for. So that's some tips there with these larger Google ad formats. I hope these help you. Hope these kind of lead you in the right direction. As mentioned, you can find me on Twitter if you have any specific questions. I'm happy to help you out. I'm happy to dig further, or at least point you to some resources. Again, you can find me at John W. Ellis. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for being a part, and enjoy the rest of State of Search. Thank you.